All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Phillip Troutman. I'm the Director of Writing in the Disciplines at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and I am currently geographically in Falls Church, Virginia, just outside D.C., inside the Beltway. I'm also an assistant professor of writing and of history, so my primary appointment is in the writing program, which is an independent program at GW, and I have a secondary appointment in history. And I wanted to do a very brief introduction to WID, and then each of us will, to WID at GW, basically how we're structured. And then each of us will give you a pitch for some methods that we use to teach WID classes within our disciplines. Then after those very short pitches, we'll have breakout rooms. We'll have 4 breakout rooms, and you will choose one of those breakout rooms and do a 15 to 20-minute exercise with that faculty member. And then we'll come back to have a general discussion about these kinds of WID teaching practices. So writing the disciplines at GW, you all will be familiar with these things, but it's a 2 course requirement, or 6 credit hours after you've passed the first year writing course. The first year writing course is a 4 credit topic variable course taught by faculty from a variety of disciplines. I'm a historian. I teach in the writing program. We have anthropologists and public health experts and a lawyer on the Supreme Court bar, et cetera. The WID courses are required to teach modes of writing that pertain to the discipline. That's defined as the faculty member or department want to define that. The writing is staged and builds over time throughout the term. Peer response is required in some form, and faculty response, of course, and 40% or more of the course has to be graded on graded writing. And so those are the criteria. We interpret those liberally and defer to faculty in terms of their teaching practices and how they implement those, although we do offer some consultation and faculty workshop support. We also have a GA program where we supply and train and support GAs in a variety of disciplines across the university. So that's the basic layout of how we're a dispersed program with some organization and administration through the writing program. So let's just go round robin to pitch what we're going to do in our breakouts, so you can decide which breakout to choose. Lowell? You're muted. You're still muted.
Not anymore. Okay, I am Lowell Abrams. I am also in the writing program. I have a secondary appointment in mathematics. Really what I want to talk about is, for a lot of people, it's hard, we talk about writing being relevant in all disciplines. It's very difficult for students to conceive of what there is to think about with regard to writing in mathematics. They're very, very much aware of the highly stylized vocabulary, the fact that the arguments need to be structured in very careful ways. They learn that words take on very peculiar meanings. And all of that just makes it seem like you're kind of learning how to manipulate a certain kind of code rather than communicating thoughts. So obviously I want to work against that idea and establish with the students that this is writing. You need to think about your reader. You want to communicate with your reader. And really, one of the most surprising things for the students is that word choice really matters. Not just the word choice, which is the technical vocabulary and the jargon, but even the simple, normal words that we use as glue to hold our prose together is very important. So what I do is, I've recently been talking with math students about the idea that we should separate out different rhetorical components. And not going into all of them, but one of the rhetorical components I mentioned is insight. And the idea that when a student is solving a problem and writing up the solution, if we're beyond the most elementary level, there must have been something that occurred to them in the process of working out that problem that wasn't automatic. And that's the insight that they had. And that insight needs to be communicated to the reader. And one communicates it through careful word choice. So this is what I'm going to focus on in the breakout session, the word choice and how choice of words conveys the attitude you have towards the mathematics you're doing, and why that's why we've adopted the conventions we've adopted, and the ways in which it can be helpful to the reader.
Great. I think Royce is next.
Hello, how's everybody going? My name is Royce Francis. I'm at George, well, we're all at GW. I'm in the engineering management assistant.
Royce, it's quite hard to hear you. I'm quite soft.
Yeah, hold on, let me see something.
You scared him off.
All right, hold on, I don't know what I can do here. Let me try this. Okay, hopefully you can hear me a little better. Can you hear me better at all, or is it still very low?
This is a little better.
A little better. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so I just want to share a couple of things. I like just having things written down in case I'm not speaking clearly. I believe I can share my screen. All right, I think you guys can see that. Do you see like a PowerPoint slide? Can someone just type that?
Yeah.
All right, great. So what I want to talk about in my breakout is problem framing and audience awareness in engineering writing. I teach in a systems engineering department. And one of the things that was introduced to me by the WID program, I am not a WID faculty member, but when I consulted the WID program, one of the things they recommended to me was to use the creating a research space model by John Swales. And I will talk about how I've applied that in the course. Now, the reason I choose that particular model is because I think that it applies to a range of types of engineering writing that the students may encounter, from different types of reports that they might write, all the way up through kind of your peer-reviewed journal article. And so the other reason I use that model is because it helps people really construct introductions and sell their work. It helps them to engage with the persuasive aspect of the work. And so if I can just skip down, I'm not going to go through all 5 of these, but if I just skip down here, the way that I kind of motivate this inside of my class is I try to situate it in a social view of understanding engineering writing. And so I try to communicate to them one version of a writing cycle that I found useful thinking about over the years. And really the CARS model, I try to explain to them that it will come out here when they are in conversation with either their stakeholders or other colleagues. And as they're understanding through those conversations, the ways that their audience frames the problems and is expecting the solutions to be framed, that's going to really help them to use their article introductions to sell their work. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on But before I do that, I would, and this will be on the slides in the breakout, I do have my materials all available, including the notes that I use, my final project instructions, my course syllabus, and several other references, including a short IEEE transactions in professional communication article that talks about the application of the CARS model to software papers. And so if you don't think that you want to use the time to attend my breakout today, but you would be interested in some of the materials, you can take down this link right here, and all of those things are there for you to look at later on. Oh, I probably should have left that up longer. Let me put it in the chat.
Exactly. I was going to say maybe throw it in the chat for us. Thanks, Royce. Alexander?
Yes, let me also share here. Hope you can see that. So in my breakout room, I'll be talking about something I do actually in 2 courses, but in different ways. It is a proposal review panels as a way of doing peer review, peer response. In one actually a physics course, another an astrophysics course. I just wanted to have a couple slides just to kind of give a general kind of like background, also kind of like where I'm coming from, and then I'll say a few words about what I will be talking about. So I am an associate professor in astrophysics in the physics department. I'm not part of the writing program, but collaborations with the writing program faculty have been extremely helpful and very guiding for what I'm actually doing in my courses. And so let me just go here. I just wanted to kind of like mention that we've actually in the physics department here, we've gone through a large-scale redesign of our curriculum in the last few years. We actually also made a new astronomy and astrophysics major a few years ago. And in all of this, we have made communication skills, both oral and written communication skills, an important focal point. And so we have 2 kind of main WID courses, writing and disciplines courses, one a sophomore junior kind of laboratory course, and then a capstone course that I teach that students take in a junior year. And then at the end of their senior year, they take a writing heavy symposium course. And also in all our astronomy and astrophysics courses, there's a lot of kind of communication skills development happening. And for all of this, again, we've been collaborating with writing faculty. It really has been crucial to use as some of the writing threshold concepts like genre, audience, etc. Things are not really that familiar with as an astrophysicist, but have been really helpful to actually teach these kind of this kind of writing well. And the peer review or peer response have been very important in all of this. And so I wanted to kind of give you a bit of a flavor of this capstone course, which is, and here you see the different kind of activities that we do in this course. And basically what we try to do in this course is have a lot of different kind of genres, but a lot of the writing that they do there are fairly short. So they write abstracts, they write summaries, they write like a cover letter, resume. A lot of these written activities also have an oral communication activity as well. And then in this particular course, there's an abstract for a research proposal, for which we then do a review panel. And but these are all kind of short written activities. And so that's as part of that, for all of these, there are peer response activities. And then for the proposal, there is the review panel. And so a larger version of that, and that is what I will be talking about in the breakout room, is something that I do in one of the astrophysics courses. So what they do, this is a fairly standard course for astronomy and astrophysics majors in terms of kind of the topics that we cover. But a very important component of that is writing an observing proposal. So basically writing a proposal to request observing time on a telescope. This is something that is very important as an astronomer, as an astrophysicist, and an important skill to have, an important genre for us. So really trying to take them kind of by the hand through that whole process, and seeing for them to see all of that on as a writer of something like that, but also as a reviewer. And so we use different approaches again from our colleagues in the writing program, and I will be talking about these different steps that we take, and how we actually do then the review in that case. How do we do the panel? And also one thing that's kind of a fun thing that we do at the end of this course actually is for them to get extra credit by writing a press release on the observations. Assume that your observing proposal has been successful. Now write a fun press release about this. Again, it's a different form of writing, different genre, but it's something that the students really seem to enjoy actually a lot. So yeah, if you're interested in hearing more about this and maybe having some discussions about how this could be work out in your discipline, then I'll be looking forward to talking about this. So I'll stop sharing and then hand it over to Phil.
Great. Having observed that, it's a pretty fascinating exercise. So I'm drawing on my history background here, although I think through years of teaching in a writing program and thinking about language and rhetoric. And the exercise, I'm going to have you, any participants who join our breakout, I'm going to have you do a hands-on exercise with writing about an image. I've got a historical image. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. And we're going to work first on description and what it means to describe something, and attempting to make no assumptions whatsoever about it, which is an impossible task. And then we'll talk about what are the implications of the kinds of things you observed and things you wrote, and where that might go in a history-oriented writing class or in a history course, thinking especially about the relationship between the object and our subjective positions as someone viewing the object and trying to interpret it, and what sorts of resources we might have to go seek out in order to interpret it, whether that's vocabulary or research or frameworks of analysis, disciplinary concepts, things like that, that we would need in order to help us, or factual context, things like that, that we would need in order to interpret this object. But also, I think something Lowell said that makes me think about this too, is what kinds of insights do we gain from attempting to describe something, pretending we don't know anything about it, or trying not, it's an explicit intellectual action to make no assumptions about something, because biology makes us make assumptions about things, right? That's what we do. And so you have to explicitly work. It's an intellectual effort to try to make no assumptions about something, but it can be an interesting exercise to see what kinds of insights come out of that, just observing, and then trying to figure out what do we do with those observations. So this is kind of this would be like a first pass exercise on a historical object. So those are our 4 breakout sessions. So we'll stay in those for 20 minutes. We're going to set those up. Alexander, you can load those, right? And then people can choose. So they should be listed as Phil for history, Alexander for astrophysics, Royce for engineering, Lowell for math. I'm the odd person out. I can talk more about that in the Q&A at the end. None of us will be offended if no one chooses our breakout sessions. We'll just hang out until everybody's done with the breakouts, and then we'll rejoin the group discussion at the end. So we didn't get much time in our session, any time really, to debrief at the end about what the exercise did. So that might be something those in my session might want to bring to the larger conversation, but feel free to take the conversation in any direction that you like. So are we all back yet?
Yep.
I think so. So I wanted to say too that this is a format that we use at GW for doing faculty development. We call this a WID roundtable, and we stole the idea from everybody, right? I mean, Mike knows these kinds of workshops go way back in the history of WAC and WID. I think it was our Teaching and Learning Center that brought us this particular format where you have several people pitch what will happen at their tables. We usually have 4 or 5 tables in a large room, and then people literally go to that table and do a 15 or 20-minute workshop, then get up and move to another one and do 2. So that's generally the format we use. It's an hour and a half or so format. We provide lunch. And so you get to hear 2 different, you get to do 2 different workshops, and then you come back and we have an at-large discussion for the last 10 or 15 minutes to think across different writing practices, across different teaching practices. And I think that one of the things it does for us is it helps create a cohort of faculty who own the system, right? Who own WID. And it's not just, us telling people that they should teach WID classes. It's the faculty at GW are shaping WID in the way they feel it should be shaped and learning from each other. I don't know if that's y'all's experience with that, Royce, Alexander, Lowell. They've all done these workshops. So then the final discussion is what happens right now is maybe what do you bring back to the group, and or what questions do you have maybe for people who went to the other workshops, or what observations would you want to make?
I think our discussion on the historical picture reminded me of what I think it was Lowell was saying, the aspects of rhetoric that do cross disciplines, and that we were able to talk about objective versus subjective language and how we need to consciously decide as writers when we will use those and to what effect either type of language that makes, and also the use of assumptions and realizing what assumptions we make. I teach a persuasive writing course, and that I feel like I talk about assumptions from day 1 till the very last day about what assumptions are we making, what assumptions can we lean on, but what assumptions should we not lean on, and how some of these exercises can help us generate those discussions, which again are good across any discipline, but we can also make them specific to whatever discipline we are teaching in for the moment.
That's interesting, Debbie. I've had engineering students actually tell me that they love this exercise because it's often what they're trying to do in a piece of technical observational writing, I guess, where you're trying to describe a system or describe a phenomenon or something like that, and you're trying to use. I always use the word ist on the end of those words, like objectivist, meaning it's ideologically objective. Like you're trying to sound objective and you're trying to be factual in the sense that these are things we can say about the thing that no one can dispute, really, right? And that's a very small number of things usually in that realm, right? And so I think of it as a style of writing more than but that can apply across different disciplines. I'm curious about what happened in math over there.
Well, everything that happened in my head. But on this point, the difference between objective and subjective language, I would say that's not typically a distinction that shows up in mathematical writing very much, because almost all the language has the sound of objectivity. The difference, the distinction that you see is between active and passive. The active is usually a second person instruction. You're telling the reader what to do. And after the reader's done what you want them to do, you then have a third person passive. The information is as such. So what this does is it is an emphasizing of the attitude that mathematics, well, it's a Platonic attitude that mathematics is independent of the people doing it. So you can do the steps, but what you're doing through the steps is discovering what was true independently of you. And that's why that's my explanation of why you see this switch. You see the switch, let X be an even integer. Da 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 da. Thus, X is such and such. And in fact, if a writer doesn't do that, they're not well trained, because that is the pattern that you see in professional mathematical writing. And so it's an interesting kind of the sensitivity to the word choice. It's like the objective versus subjective, and understanding what you mean when you say something in an objective form. What are you really saying when you say something in a passive? These are the facts.
The effect for me, Lowell, when I attended your workshop years ago, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and one of your colleagues was sitting to my right, and one of your mathematics colleagues was sitting to my right, and I wrote what Lowell gave us a problem, and we had to sort of explain, and I didn't understand enough of the algebra problem. I think he overrated our algebraic knowledge, but I try to write things like, first you move the X over here and you divide it into this. And so that that will solve for this part of it, and then you have to move this thing over here or something like that. But he was using language like you just described, that if this, or let this equal this, therefore this solves for this, or something like that. I don't even remember the exact language, but the picture I have in my head is of the math problem solving itself. That the things moved around on their own and saw like a little animation. That's what I had in my head. Versus me, it was like a person making the effort to do it. And I just thought that was like a really interesting sort of an ideological difference in thinking about what math is doing, and that it signals, as you said, different professional or maybe purposeful. Maybe it serves the purpose at a different moment. An instructor might use the first person, second person kind of grammar, right? You do this, then you do this. But then in writing for their colleagues, they would write in the passive way. What about from physics or engineering? What observations from the participants?
Well, I found I had a really good conversation with Dr. van der Horst. So I think the activity that he walked us through was really good, in the sense of the way that the students have to really engage, not only with their own abstract writing and then draft writing and then potentially remediating things, but also these review panels. I thought that was really smart. So I enjoyed that conversation a lot, and I thought this is helpful. It kind of got me thinking again, how might I adjust my first year writing course next spring, which I'm teaching it again, to start thinking about how do I engage them in more role-playing kinds of work as they do peer review. And I think that was really helpful for me just as a teacher. So thanks.
One of the things I remember in observing Alexander is he invited me to his class, and so I got to watch one of these review panels work. And one of the things I was most struck by, that the instruction in the prompt says you have to, and students brought this up during the conversation, you have to use language intended for a general physics audience. And I just thought, that's an oxymoron, isn't it? Like, what is a general physics? That sounds pretty special to me already, but it meant obviously that not all physicists use the same vocabulary or the same kinds of frameworks for things. And that if you use a specialized term from your field, you have to first of all learn which ones are the specialized terms that I know that my colleagues won't know. And that seems pretty difficult, first of all, right? And then once they understand, you don't use that term. Well, and then you have to come up with a very quick way of explaining what that term means, right? You use the term, then you have a little clause that, explains the term. Maybe it's a full sentence if that's needed. And now you've established it so that they can go on reading. And to me, that was one of the most striking things, was the sort of at the micro level, what kinds of vocabulary they were using. What about from Royce's session in engineering? observations there worth bringing out here? Royce, how did it go over there? I'm not hearing you.
I wish we had had time to learn more about how to wrangle students to a clearly defined, feasible problem within the scope of a course, particularly when it's not you're not asking them to come up with a problem related to content that you are teaching. So it's a very ill-structured problem that you're presenting them with, and one in my experience is very challenging for some students, and I just was really impressed that Royce gets them to do that so quickly.
We just have a minute or two left. I wonder if you could elaborate on that for about 30 seconds. What is that? Do you see that as a writing problem? Is it, or is it conceptual problem, or how are those related in your experience with your students?
I've seen it very generally when you ask students to come up with a topic, they go into paralysis. But I was attracted by the title because engineering, as in the fields I teach in, is very much about problem solving. And a challenge for students is often, as an engineer or data scientist, people come to you with a problem. As Royce pointed out, they may not always know that it's a problem. So it's a double challenge that the authentic situation, somebody's coming to you with something, or they've hired you to figure some things out. Students are really often at sea, and as they're particularly interested in a specific thing, and often they're just have no concept of the constraints of time and how to narrow a project or a proposal down. So I've always thought, I've worked with the Research Skills Development Framework from John Willis and Adelaide, that the defining and specifying a problem is an aspect of writing that is under addressed, and it's an issue that is very, very clear in STEM fields, perhaps more so than in humanities and some other fields, because of the precision that's required around the question.
Yep. Thank you. We're out of time. I just threw my email in the chat there. Thanks, Caleb, for copying it back out. Our emails are also on the panel description, I think. If not, then if you send email to me, I can get messages to whoever needs it if you're looking for more materials or anything like that. Thanks, everybody.